All right, today we're going to talk about a plane that wasn't just part of the war. It literally changed the entire game. We're diving into the legendary story of the P-51 Mustang.
I mean, think about that for a second. That's not some Allied general talking it up. That's the head of the German Luftwaffe. When the enemy's top guy says the jig was up because of your plane, you know you've built something truly special. This one sentence tells you everything about the kind of punch the Mustang packed.
So yeah, what was it? What made this plane so incredible? Well, it's a wild story, really. It's a mix of total desperation, some seriously clever engineering, and one of the most famous engine swaps in history. It was just the perfect storm, creating the perfect weapon at the exact moment it was needed most. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1943. The skies over Germany are a total meat grinder. Allied bombers, these huge B-17s, are flying deep into enemy territory, and they are just getting torn to shreds. There was this idea, right, that the bombers, flying in these tight formations, could protect themselves with all their machine guns. Well, that theory was being proven wrong, tragically, on a daily basis.
26%. Just let that number sink in. During one horrific mission, the Schweinfurt raid, the 8th Air Force lost over a quarter of its planes in one go. And remember, these weren't just empty machines falling from the sky. Each one had a crew of 10 guys inside. You can't keep fighting a war with losses like that. It was absolutely unsustainable.
And the problem was range. See, the bombers did have fighter escorts, planes like the tough P-47 Thunderbolt. But here's the catch. They couldn't go all the way. The bomber crews would watch in dread as their little friends, the fighters, would waggle their wings to say goodbye and then peel off, heading for home because they were out of fuel. And that's when the bombers were left all alone, completely at the mercy of the German fighters.
But here's where the story gets interesting. The Mustang, well, it already existed. Kinda. The basic airframe was flying around, built by North American Aviation for the British. And the design itself was brilliant, super sleek, very low drag. But it had a secret, a really, really big flaw. And this was the problem right here. Its engine. The original American-made Allison engine was fine down low, but the real fight, the high-stakes dogfights protecting the bombers, was happening way up high, above 20,000 feet. And up there, in that thin air, the Allison engine just gasped for breath. It was like a world-class sprinter trying to run a race at the top of Mount Everest. It just couldn't compete.
Okay, so now we get to the part of the story that's become absolute legend. A British test pilot is looking at this beautiful American plane with its wheezing engine and has this aha moment, a brilliantly simple, game-changing idea.
The thought was, what if we take this amazing airframe and give it a proper British heart? What if we could cram the engine from our very best fighter, the legendary Spitfire, into this American body? And that engine, of course, was the one, the only Rolls-Royce Merlin.
And just look at the difference it made. It's night and day. Up there at altitude, where it counted, the Merlin engine was an absolute beast. This wasn't just a small improvement. This was like taking a family sedan and turning it into a Formula One race car. A total, utter transformation.
So what was the Merlin's secret sauce? It was this beautiful piece of tech, a two-speed, two-stage supercharger. Now, don't worry about the jargon. Just think of it like this. It was a special kind of air pump for the engine that had a high gear, specifically for thin, high-altitude air. When the Allison engine was gasping, the Merlin was just shifting into high gear and screaming along.
So, with its new British heart beating strong, the P-51 Mustang was completely reborn. It was no longer a low-altitude disappointment. It was now the solution. It was the plane that was about to go out and completely rewrite the rules of the air war over Europe.
1,650 miles. This is the number that sent a chill down the spine of the entire German Luftwaffe. Why? Because with extra fuel tanks slapped under its wings, the P-51 could now fly from England all the way to Berlin and all the way back. It had legs.
And that was the game changer. For the first time, those bomber crews weren't alone. They had their little friends with them, not just for part of the trip, but from takeoff to target and all the way home again. Imagine the relief. Their nightmare of fighting alone was finally over.
And the result of this? Absolute carnage. We're talking nearly 5,000 enemy planes shot down by Mustang pilots. That's more than any other Allied fighter in the European theater. They weren't just playing defense anymore. They were taking the fight to the enemy and completely dominating the sky.
In fact, the P-51 were so good, it totally flipped the strategy on its head. The USAF commander, the famous Jimmy Doolittle, basically said, "Why wait for them to attack us?" He unleashed the Mustangs. He told his pilots their primary mission was to hunt and destroy German fighters. So they flew ahead of the bombers on fighter sweeps, clearing the skies before the bombers even arrived.
Now, the Merlin engine was obviously the heart of the legend, but let's not forget, it was dropped into an airframe that was already revolutionary. There were a couple of other brilliant design features that made the Mustang the total package.
One of its biggest secrets was the wing design. It used something called a laminar flow wing. The simplest way to think about it is that it's just way more slippery, aerodynamically. It's like a super sharp knife compared to a butter knife. It sliced through the air with way less drag, which gave it incredible speed and, crucially, better fuel economy for that all-important range.
And then there's this, which is just pure genius. Okay, so every liquid-cooled engine needs a big radiator, right? And that radiator scoop hanging underneath the plane creates a ton of drag. But the designers of the Mustang were so clever. They designed the radiator housing in a way that the hot air shooting out the back actually created a tiny bit of jet thrust. It literally canceled out its own drag. How cool is that?
But you know, beyond all the numbers and the tech specs, the pilots, they just flat out loved this plane. This quote from a British pilot sums it up perfectly. He basically called it the American Spitfire. It handled beautifully, like a sports car. It had the raw power and long legs of an American fighter, but the elegance and agility of a European one. Truly, the best of both worlds.
And believe it or not, the story doesn't stop when World War II ends. The design was so fundamentally sound, so good, that the Mustang had a whole second life, and a third. For decades after the war, it was designed to win.
I mean, just look at its resume after 1945. It was back in combat during the Korean War, redesignated the F-51. It served with the Air National Guard all the way until 1957, well into the jet age. Dozens of other countries flew it, and of course, it became an absolute superstar in civilian life as a high-speed air racer, a role it still plays today. What an incredible legacy. So what do you get when you take a brilliant idea, match it with the perfect engine at the exact moment of desperate need? You get the P-51 Mustang. It's the ultimate story of synergy, right? A brilliant American design paired with a legendary British heart, born out of total crisis. The result wasn't just another great plane, it was a genuine war winner, an aircraft that didn't just change battles, it changed history.